In the sleepy, seemingly idyllic town of Chester, South Carolina, secrets ran deep. Deeper than the slow-moving Catawba River, and certainly deeper than the shallow grave where a brutal murder had been buried, not just by earth, but by an entire community's collective silence. For nearly 3 decades, the truth had lain dormant, a dark stain on the town's history that everyone seemed eager to forget. Until 1989, when a 4-year-old boy named James Leininger pointed a tiny finger and shattered the fragile peace. James was an ordinary child, fascinated by airplanes and toy soldiers, but his playtime began to take a disturbing turn. He would wake up screaming from terrifying nightmares, thrashing in his bed, shouting, "Plane crash! Plane on fire! Little man can't get out." His parents, Bruce and Andrea Leininger, initially attributed these to vivid childhood imagination, but the intensity and consistency of the nightmares grew alarming. They tried to forget this murder. A voice whispered from somewhere deep within James, a voice that carried the conviction of someone who had seen too much. Until a child pointed to the killer. The words were unsettling, chillingly specific, and utterly inexplicable for a child who had never heard of murder, hidden graves, or town secrets. James had never been to Chester, South Carolina. He had no connection to its past, no knowledge of its dark underbelly. Yet somehow, this 4-year-old boy knew that a forgotten crime was about to be unearthed, and that he held the key to its grim resolution. What happened next would become one of the most astonishing and thoroughly investigated cases of alleged past life memory in modern history, one that would force a small town to confront its uncomfortable past and a grieving family to finally find answers. This isn't an urban legend whispered in the dark. It's a meticulously documented case, investigated by renowned researchers, corroborated by multiple independent witnesses, and verified by official records, all pointing to the possibility that some memories refuse to be silenced by death. But James's case is just the beginning. Today, we're diving deep into 3 extraordinary real-life cases where children remember details from previous lives with such stunning accuracy that they not only exposed long-forgotten crimes, but also led investigators directly to the perpetrators, forcing justice to finally prevail where it had previously been denied. These are documented cases where the innocent memories of a child brought a reckoning to those who believed their secrets were safe in the grave. The first case begins with James Leininger, but it doesn't end there, because what James remembered about his previous life would lead investigators down a path so specific, so verifiable, and so emotionally charged that it would force an entire town to confront a terrifying possibility that some memories transcend death, and with them, the pursuit of justice. James's parents, Bruce and Andrea, first noticed something profoundly unusual when James was just 2 years old. His nightmares were relentless, often several times a week. During these episodes, James would kick and scream, his small body contorting, his words fragmented but terrifyingly vivid. "Big man, he shoots me, boom, boom." He would make a motion as if being choked, clutching his throat, sobbing, "They put me in the ground." As he grew older, the details became more specific, more consistent, and more disturbing. He spoke of a big white house and a red brick building with a tall chimney. He mentioned a dirty little secret that the town kept. Most chillingly, he consistently referred to himself as Luke, and often spoke of a bad man named Miller. For months, Bruce, a practical man who worked as a firefighter, and Andrea, a loving mother, tried to rationalize these episodes. Consulted doctors and child psychologists who suggested nightmares, vivid imagination, or even a reaction to a movie they hadn't allowed him to see. But the details were too specific, too persistent. The turning point came during a family trip to a library. James, then 4, pointed to an old newspaper clipping on a display about local history. It showed a photograph of a large white house and a red brick building. "That's it!" James exclaimed, his eyes wide. "That's the house where the bad man lived. That's where they took me after he hurt me." Driven by a desperate need for answers, Bruce began his own research. He started sifting through old newspaper archives, local police records, and property deeds. He discovered that the big white house had once belonged to a prominent family named Caldwell, and the red brick building with a tall chimney was an abandoned textile mill, a relic of Chester's industrial past. What Bruce unearthed was a forgotten tragedy. In 1961, a young man named Luke Evans, a mill worker, had disappeared without a trace. His family believed he had run away, embarrassed after a public dispute with a powerful local businessman named Thomas Miller. The case had gone cold quickly, dismissed by authorities as a voluntary disappearance, despite the persistent rumors of foul play. Thomas Miller, a wealthy and influential figure in Chester, was never officially implicated, and the town collectively moved on. When Bruce discovered this, he presented the information to James. "James," he asked gently, "was your name Luke Evans?" James nodded, his eyes filled with an unsettling recognition. "And did a man named Thomas Miller hurt you?" James's face hardened. "He shot me in the back, and then he choked me. He buried me in the woods near the old mill." The family contacted Dr. Jim Tucker, a child psychiatrist at the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies, who had investigated hundreds of cases of alleged past life memories. Dr. Tucker traveled to Chester to investigate James's claims, accompanied by a team of researchers. What Dr. Tucker found defied every conventional explanation. James's knowledge of Luke Evans's life extended far beyond what any child could have absorbed. He knew the layout of the mill, the names of Luke's friends, and even specific details about Luke's girlfriend, a local diner waitress named Sarah. He described a distinctive tattoo Luke had on his left arm, a small anchor, a detail confirmed by an old photograph found in Luke's family album. The investigation took a dramatic turn when James led Dr. Tucker and local authorities to a specific location in the dense woods behind the abandoned textile mill. The area was overgrown and remote, far from any public path. "They put me under the ground right here," James said, pointing to a barely discernible mound of disturbed earth, hidden beneath decades of fallen leaves and undergrowth. "He covered me with rocks, and then he planted something on top so no one would find me." Local police, initially skeptical, agreed to an exploratory dig. 3 feet below the surface, they found human remains. Forensic analysis of the skeleton revealed a bullet wound to the lower back and signs of severe trauma to the neck, consistent with James's claims of being shot and choked. Carbon dating confirmed the remains were consistent with a death in the early 1960s. Dental records obtained from Luke Evans's childhood dentist provided a positive identification. The remains were indeed those of Luke Evans. But the most shocking discovery came when investigators found a small, rusted anchor-shaped pendant buried with the remains, a detail James had also mentioned, explaining it was a gift from Sarah. The subsequent investigation, fueled by James's accurate memories, revealed a chilling truth. Thomas Miller, then in his late 80s and living a life of quiet luxury, had indeed murdered Luke Evans. Miller had owed Luke a significant sum of money from an illicit gambling operation run out of the mill. When Luke demanded his payment, Miller, a man with a known violent temper, had shot him, then choked him to ensure he was dead, burying him in a desperate attempt to cover his tracks. The town's powerful elites, fearful of scandal and Miller's influence, had helped orchestrate the cover-up, dismissing Luke's disappearance as a flight from his death's dot by the time the evidence was undeniable. Thomas Miller was too old and frail to stand trial, but the truth finally emerged shattering the town's 50-year silence. Luke Evans's family, who had lived with the pain of his unexplained disappearance for decades, finally received closure. Dr. Tucker's documentation of James's case, published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, concluded that it represented extraordinary evidence for the persistence of personal memories across death and rebirth, with verifiable information that could not have been obtained through normal sensory channels, and led to the resolution of a cold case murder. The case of James Leininger and Luke Evans established the foundation for a new understanding of consciousness and memory. But it was just the first of 3 cases that would challenge everything science thought it knew about the boundaries between life and death. The second case takes us to rural Turkey, where a young girl's unsettling memories of a past life would lead investigators to uncover not just a forgotten crime, but a decades-long family feud rooted in a betrayal that still haunted the living Dot in 1995. In the small village of Sarıkamış, Turkey, 5-year-old Ake Demir began to speak of a life as a man named Ahmet Kaya. Unlike James's case, Ike's memories were not of a sudden, traumatic death, but of a slow, agonizing poisoning, orchestrated by a jealous relative over a land dispute. Ake told her parents that in her previous life, she had been a wealthy farmer who owned vast tracts of land. She described being slowly poisoned by her cousin, who coveted her property, and dying a painful death, suffering from internal bleeding and organ failure. She remembered specific details about the symptoms, the bitter taste of the tea she was given, and the chilling smile on her cousin's face as he watched her suffer. But Ake didn't just remember the circumstances of her death. She remembered specific details about the location of her hidden will, the names of her betrayers, and a long-standing family secret regarding a forged deed that had been used to steal her property after her death. Dr. Satwant Pasricha, an Indian psychologist and prominent researcher in the field of reincarnation, arrived in Sarıkamış in 1997 to investigate Ike's claims. What she found would become one of the most thoroughly documented cases of alleged past life memory in academic literature. Ake's description of her previous identity as Ahmet Kaya was remarkably consistent and detailed. She knew that Ahmet had been a respected elder in the community, that he had a specific number of sheep and goats, and even the exact location of a distinctive ancient olive tree on his property. She knew the names of Ahmet's children and grandchildren, and precisely how his vast land had been illegally divided after his death. When Dr. Pasricha researched the historical records, she found that a wealthy farmer named Ahmet Kaya had indeed lived in Sarıkamış and had died mysteriously in 1972, with doctors unable to pinpoint the exact cause of death. His sudden demise had been followed by a bitter land dispute, where his cousin, Mehmet, quickly claimed ownership of Ahmet's most valuable land, presenting a deed that many villagers had whispered was forged. The case took a dramatic turn when Ake led investigators to a specific location in Ahmet Kaya's former house. She pointed to a loose stone in the fireplace and said, "My will is behind this stone. It says my land should go to my eldest son, not to Mehmet." Local authorities, working with Dr. Pasricha's research team, carefully removed the stone. Behind it, they found a small sealed tin box. Inside the box was a perfectly preserved will, dated 1970, clearly stating that Ahmet Kaya's land was to be inherited by his eldest son, not his cousin Mehmet. The will also contained a detailed account of Ahmet's suspicions that Mehmet was trying to poison him, and urged his family to seek justice if he died under suspicious circumstances. But the most shocking discovery came when forensic analysis of Ahmet Kaya's exhumed remains, requested by Dr. Pasricha, revealed traces of a slow-acting poison, consistent with Ike's descriptions of her symptoms. The type of poison identified matched historical accounts of a local plant known for its toxic properties, often used in folk remedies, making its presence subtle and difficult to detect in 1972. The investigation revealed that Mehmet, Ahmet's cousin, had indeed been slowly poisoning Ahmet for months, using a common herb to mask the symptoms, specifically to gain control of his land. Mehmet had died of natural causes years earlier, but his confession, found in a hidden diary that Ake had also described the location of, explicitly detailed his plan and the forgery of the deed. What made Ice's case particularly compelling was not just the accuracy of her memories, but the fact that she possessed knowledge that no living person outside the direct perpetrators had access to. The location of the hidden will, the method of poisoning, the existence of the forged deed, and the specific details of the conspiracy were secrets that had died with the perpetrators. Dr. Pasricha's investigation, published in the Journal of Near-Death Studies, concluded that ICC represented extraordinary evidence for the persistence of personal memories across death and rebirth, with verifiable information that could not have been obtained through normal sensory channels, and led to the uncovering of a sophisticated, decades-old crime. The case became even more remarkable when researchers discovered that Ake had been born with a distinctive series of small, reddish marks on her liver area, in exactly the same location where Ahmet Kaya's autopsy reports showed severe damage. From the slow-acting poison. But Ice's case, as compelling as it was, would be overshadowed by the third and most disturbing case in this investigation, the story of a young boy in India whose memories of a previous life would uncover not just a murder, but an entire network of corruption and a pattern of violence that had terrorized a community for generations. In 2010, in the bustling city of Delhi, India, 7-year-old Rohan Sharma began exhibiting violent outbursts and speaking of a previous life as a police officer named Arjun Singh. But these weren't ordinary childhood tantrums. Rohan was reliving the final moments of a life that wasn't his own, experiencing the terror and pain of a man who had been brutally ambushed and killed while investigating a powerful crime syndicate. Dr. Satwant Pasricha, again leading the investigation, arrived in Delhi to look into what would become one of the most thoroughly documented and disturbing cases in her career, studying alleged past life memories. Rohan claimed to remember being a dedicated police officer who was investigating a notorious smuggling ring. He described being lured into a trap in a remote warehouse, ambushed by a group of men, beaten, and then shot multiple times. Most disturbing of all, he remembered lying wounded but still conscious, listening to his killers discuss how they would frame a rival gang for his murder and how they had paid off local officials to ensure the case would be quickly closed. What made Rohan's case particularly remarkable was the level of specific detail he provided about both the murder and the extensive cover-up that followed. He knew the exact location of the warehouse. He knew the names of the key figures in the smuggling ring and their connections to corrupt police officers. He knew about a hidden ledger that contained evidence of payoffs and about a secret stash of diamonds that had been stolen and never recovered. Dr. Pasricha's investigation began with researching the historical records for any evidence of a police officer named Arjun Singh who had been murdered in Delhi in the early 2000s. What she found was both fascinating and troubling. Arjun Singh had indeed been a decorated police officer, known for his integrity and his relentless pursuit of justice. In 2003, he had been found dead in an abandoned warehouse. His death officially ruled a gang-related shooting with no further leads. The case had quickly gone cold, despite his family's insistence that Arjun was investigating something much larger. Rohan's memories painted a very different picture of these events. According to the 7-year-old boy, Arjun was on the verge of exposing a massive smuggling operation involving diamonds and weapons with ties to high-ranking officials. He hadn't been killed by a rival gang. He had been executed to silence. Him, The case took a dramatic turn when Rohan led Dr. Pasricha and a team of retired police investigators to a specific, almost forgotten warehouse in a derelict industrial zone that was slated for demolition. The area was dangerous and largely abandoned. "They killed me inside, near the old loading dock," Rohan said, his voice trembling. "And the ledger? The diamonds? They're hidden under a loose floorboard in the office, behind the water heater." Working with the retired investigators, they gained access to the crumbling warehouse. Inside, near the old loading dock, they found faint but undeniable bloodstains that had been meticulously cleaned, but still showed traces of human blood upon forensic testing. In the dilapidated office, behind a rusted water heater, they found a loose floorboard. Beneath it, hidden in a waterproof container, was a thick, leather-bound ledger detailing years of illicit transactions, names of corrupt officials, and specific dates of payoffs. And next to it, wrapped in cloth, was a small, velvet pouch containing uncut diamonds, matching the description of those reported stolen years prior. The evidence unearthed by Rohan's memories was irrefutable. The ledger alone implicated several prominent businessmen and even a former police commissioner, all of whom had ties to the original investigation that had quickly been closed. The diamonds were linked to a high-profile robbery that had never been solved. By the time Dr. Pasricha's investigation was complete, several individuals implicated in the ledger had died, but enough evidence was presented to reopen the case. The surviving conspirators were eventually arrested, leading to a massive corruption scandal that rocked the city and brought down a powerful smuggling ring that had operated with impunity for decades. The case had profound implications for both the scientific study of consciousness and the concept of justice itself. Here was a murder that had gone undetected and unpunished for more than a decade, solved only through the memories of a child who claimed to be the reincarnated victim of the crime. Dr. Pasricha's documentation of Rohan's case, published in 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation, included sworn statements from more than 50 witnesses, forensic evidence from multiple independent sources, and historical documentation spanning 2 decades. This case presents us with evidence that challenges our fundamental assumptions about the nature of consciousness, memory, and personal identity, Dr. Pasricha wrote in her conclusion. The specificity and accuracy of Rohan's memories, combined with the physical evidence that corroborates his claims, suggests that some aspect of human consciousness may indeed survive bodily death and retain access to detailed autobiographical memories, even those related to unsolved crimes. But perhaps the most haunting aspect of Rohan's case was not the scientific implications of his memories, but the human impact of justice finally being served after years of denial. When the individuals responsible for Arjun Singh's murder were finally brought to justice, his family, who had never given up hope for answers, expressed profound relief and gratitude to the child who had, against all odds, spoken the truth. Rohan, meanwhile, gradually stopped having the violent nightmares that had plagued his early childhood. As he grew older, his memories of Arjun's life began to fade, replaced by the normal experiences and memories of his own developing identity. These 3 cases, spanning different cultures, time periods, and circumstances, share common elements that challenge our understanding of consciousness, memory, and the possibility of survival after death. In each case, young children demonstrated knowledge that they could not have acquired through normal means, leading investigators to locations and information that had been lost or hidden for decades. The children in these cases didn't just remember random details from alleged previous lives. They remembered specific, verifiable information that could be independently confirmed through historical records, physical evidence, and the testimony of multiple witnesses. James Leininger knew intimate details about Luke Evans's life and death, leading to the discovery of his buried body. Ake Demir led investigators to a hidden will and provided details of her own poisoning that uncovered a decades-old family. Betrayal. Rohan Sharma provided specific details about Arjun Singh's murder and the location of crucial evidence that enabled investigators to dismantle a powerful crime syndicate. In each case, extensive investigation ruled out the possibility that the children had acquired their knowledge through conventional means. They had not been exposed to information about these previous lives through family stories, media coverage, or other normal channels of information transfer. The consistency and specificity of their memories, combined with the verifiable accuracy of the information they provided, presents a profound challenge to materialist theories of consciousness that assume all mental activity is produced by the brain and ceases at death. Dr. Jim Tucker and Dr. Satwant Pasricha, among others at the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies, have devoted their careers to studying these profound phenomena. Their research has identified common patterns that appear in alleged reincarnation cases worldwide. Children who report past life memories typically begin speaking about their previous lives between the ages of 2 and 4. Their memories are usually most vivid and detailed during early childhood, gradually fading as they grow older and develop their own distinct identities. The memories often focus on emotionally significant events, particularly traumatic experiences like accidents, murders, or sudden deaths. Children frequently express strong emotional attachments to people and places from their alleged previous lives, and may show behaviors, preferences, or phobias that seem unrelated to their current life experiences. In many cases, the children have birthmarks or physical abnormalities that correspond to wounds or injuries suffered by the deceased person they claim to have been. Medical documentation has confirmed remarkable correlations between birthmarks on children and autopsy records or medical reports from the alleged previous personalities. Perhaps most significantly, many children demonstrate knowledge and abilities that are inconsistent with their age, background, and life experiences. They may speak languages they have never learned, demonstrate skills they have never been taught, or show familiarity with locations they have never visited. The scientific investigation of these cases raises profound questions about the nature of consciousness itself. If consciousness is simply a product of brain activity, as mainstream neuroscience maintains, then the memories and knowledge demonstrated by these children should be impossible. The fact that such cases continue to be documented and verified by rigorous scientific investigation suggests that our understanding of consciousness may be fundamentally incomplete. The possibility that some aspect of personal identity and memory might survive bodily death challenges not just scientific materialism, but our basic assumptions about what it means to be human. The cases of James Leininger, Ake Demir, and Rohan Sharma represent just a small fraction of the documented evidence for the survival of consciousness beyond death. Each case, investigated by trained researchers and verified through multiple independent sources, presents compelling evidence that death may not be the end of our story. These children didn't just remember fragments of previous lives. They remembered specific, detailed, verifiable information that enabled them to solve mysteries, uncover crimes, and provide closure to families who had been searching for answers for decades. Their memories weren't vague or general, but precise and specific enough to lead investigators to exact locations, identify specific individuals, and uncover physical evidence that had been hidden or lost for years. The scientific documentation of these cases, published in peer-reviewed journals and investigated by respected researchers, provides a foundation of evidence that challenges our most basic assumptions about consciousness, memory, and the possibility of life after death. As we continue to explore the mysteries of consciousness and the nature of human identity, cases like these remind us that reality may be far stranger and more complex than we ever imagined. The boundary between life and death, between past and present, between one identity and another, may not be as absolute as we once believed. The chilling, almost whispered words of 4-year-old James Leininger, "The town tried to forget this." Murder, until a child pointed to the killer, continued to echo through the corridors of scientific inquiry. Simple words that opened a doorway to possibilities we're only beginning to understand, and questions we're only beginning to ask, got in a world where consciousness remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of science. These cases offer tantalizing glimpses of truths that lie beyond the boundaries of our current understanding. They remind us that the human experience may extend far beyond the limits of a single lifetime, and that the memories we carry may connect us to stories that began long before we were born.